Hey, pre-calculus. In this video, I'm going to be covering 5-2 day 2. This is more proofs involving factoring. I think in this video I'm only going to do one, but it'll be good practice. And at this point, we're just trying to get you to gain more confidence with not factoring, but proofs in general, and understanding when to use certain identities and when to use certain algebra skills. So we're going to prove cotangent of x times secant of x times cosecant squared of x minus cotangent cubed of x and secant of x. We're going to prove that that is equivalent to just cosecant of x. So, starting off, you might think, okay, let's just turn everything in terms of sine and cosine. Or maybe you think to change cosecant using the Pythagorean identity. All things that are legit, but one thing we want you guys to start thinking about is factoring. And when we look at this, we've got two terms. Do they have anything in common that we can factor out? And if you look, they do, right? Cotangent, each term has cotangent, and then each term, so this first term and the second term, also both have secant. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start by factoring out a cotangent and a secant. And I factor that out from this first term. These both go away, and I'm left with the cosecant squared of x. And then this will just become cotangent squared. And I factored out a secant, so that is it. So the reasoning for this line is algebra. More specifically, we factored here. Okay. So at this point, if we look here, we have cosecant squared and cotangent squared, and maybe you're thinking Pythagorean identity. And what's interesting is it's the same one. So if I pull out my note card to show you, remember 1 plus cotangent squared equals cosecant squared of x. So if I just subtract cotangent, that's what I have here. So this is actually equivalent to 1. So I'm going to bring down my cotangent of x times secant of x, and this I'm going to change to a 1. And the reasoning for that is the Pythagorean identity. Okay, now I want to start rearranging this because we want it to be cosecant and these aren't cosecant. So I'm going to use the quotient identity first to change cotangent to be cosine of x over sine of x. And then remember, since we're using Alex in this class, Alex is not going to allow you to do two things at once. We need to do one identity at a time. Make sure, so like part of it is just trying and manipulating, but also part of it is making sure you're paying attention to what we're actually trying to prove this to be. So I'm going to bring down my cosine of x and my sine of x. And I'm going to change this to be 1 over cosine of x. And that was the reciprocal identity. And these will now cancel. So I'll be left with 1 over sine of x. And that is just algebra. And finally, we use the reciprocal identity to make this cosecant of x. And we've successfully proven that cotangent times secant times cosecant squared minus cotangent cubed times secant is equivalent to cosecant. So when you're doing these problems, obviously the first thing you want to do is just try, and if you don't think to factor, then it is going to get a bit complex, but it's still doable. Remember, there's more than one way to prove these things. If it's starting to get really messy, like, I don't know, sometimes when you're proving stuff, you choose the harder way, and then you're like, wow, this is really gross looking and complicated and hard for me to do. Well, then sometimes it's worth just like starting over and trying something different and seeing if that works. And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, then go back to your challenging proof and just slowly get through it. But at this point, you've learned everything based on like the handful of identities I've taught you, as well as the tips we've gone through. So now it's just a matter of gaining confidence and practicing.